Hello everyone, welcome once again to the Hindu Explainer series. I am Kushagra Goyal and very warm greetings from Rawprep Tutorial. So we all know that the date of examination is getting closer, and in that sense you need to now focus on very important news only, right? But as you all know that there is a large section of the newspaper series that is now preparing for CLAT 2022 and 2023 also. So the news that is highlighted is the one that is immediately important for CLAT 2021 aspirants, right? But there is still news that need to be known for other aspirants, right? So let's dive into the newspaper. So on the front page, the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand has resigned, alright. Now he was appointed 4 months ago, but he wasn't the member of the assembly. Therefore, there is a constitutional limitation wherein someone who is appointed as a member of the Council of Minister or Chief Minister, right, they need to become a member of the House within 6 months, alright. As you all know, India is a parliamentary system of governance wherein the executive is directly responsible and comes from the parliament or the legislature, right? So you can describe it within this formula wherein L and in bracket that is the E. So in case an executive member who is not a member of the House, right, then within 6 months they need to become the member of the House. Now, because there are no elections that are forthcoming, he would have fallen short of this constitutional requirement and thus has tendered his resignation now, alright. Then apart from this is the news about, at the right hand side, Lashkar-e-Taiba could be behind the drone attack at Jammu. We all know that yesterday a drone attack took place in the Jammu area, alright, on the army headquarters. Now in that regard, it is claimed no terrorist organization has formally claimed the attack used drones, that is weapons or explosive was dropped from the drone. Now you all know we have had vaccine deliveries from drones, we have had delivery of essentials from drones, so it was always likely that someone somewhere is going to use something of technology against human being. We know every technology in the world, somehow humans somewhere find a way to abuse it, alright. So this was an example of that. Apart from this, on the front page, nothing of real note for us. So turning to the editorial section of the news, right. So the one news is about this editorial written by our former National Security Advisor M.K. Narayanan. Now, in the centenary backdrop, this is no hand of peace. That the Chinese Communist Party is not anywhere close to what is there, a peaceful or something grandeur that you need to hold them, someone who you should hold at a higher pedestal, alright. Now, there are some things that he is talking about. This is a very important editorial from the segment of understanding the psyche of the Chinese Communist Party, alright, a very important one. Now, couple of things that need to be noted down. So in 1921, when communism was on the rise after the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, alright, the USSR had been formulated, Bolshevik Russia, the Soviet state. So in that regard, communist parties were formulated across the world. India's Communist Party was also established in the same year. Now, what has the Chinese Communist Party done? From 1921 to 1949, when they won the civil war against the socialists, right? Since then, they have been in power in China, alright? They have been controlling China in totality. While they have been doing this, there was the event of Tiananmen Square, that is 1989, alright, where pro-democracy protesters were killed brutally by tanks, alright, by the police, alright. At the same time, this is what is now China doing. So every time there are two things that M.K. Narayanan sir talks about. There are two things that China does. Whenever there is internal trouble in China, there is a military posturing that it does. Secondly, to achieve the goals of the Communist Party or its leaders, there is widespread authoritarianism that takes place. Both the things are present right now in China. That is Xi Jinping, who is also countering some internal murmurings from his Communist Party. The Communist Party is not a monolith. There are different kind of voices there. So therefore, to establish his position in totality, he needs to take violence as a recourse, which is evident in what it is doing in the LAC and in the South China Sea. The second part is to have more and more authoritarianism. Now, the Communist Party believes that these large-scale companies are becoming too large for it to be controlled. All right. So we see the anti-corruption, competition investigations, fines being put in, and other things that are happening in China. All of this is larger scheme of things of Xi Jinping to establish complete control. At the same time, this authoritarianism comes at the cost of human lives. So therefore, this is no hand of peace. That China in the long term is also not going to be someone who is going to be a harbinger of peace for the world. All right, it is going to talk about its self-interest, and that is what this is all about. So please give this editorial a read for a general understanding of the Chinese psyche. Then the left hand side, unjust green, India must continue to monitor discrimination in vaccine passport issue. When you approve a vaccine that is administered or manufactured in a country favorable to you, but you don't approve a similar vaccine manufactured and administered in a country that is not favorable or not as friendly as you, that is discrimination on the face of it. This is what European Union has generally done right now with the Covishield vaccine. Covishield is a modified version of the AstraZeneca vaccine. The AstraZeneca vaccine is the one that it has been approved in European Union, but Indians or the Covishield vaccine has been left out. This is the discrimination that this is talking about, that and the vaccine nationalism that is was believed to be a threat to the world. That for countries to claim that, see, only when you take my national vaccine, I will let you enter my country, was the vaccine nationalism that everyone was countering or warning us against. Therefore, India taking a stand against this and to get Covishield approved is a principle against vaccine nationalism, something that our Prime Minister has been clear on point. All right. Then on the left hand side, net loss, center must help provide internet links to all schools as an essential service. Receiving or access to internet is a methodology to receive information. Receive of information is a basic part of our fundamental rights under Article 19. To exercise your free choice, to choose whether this pen is better or writing by hand is better, you need to have information of the pros and cons of pen and writing by hand, right? So therefore, if you don't have access to internet today, you don't have access to education, because physical schools are shut for the past 2 years almost, right? And thus, this editorial talks about that access to internet is a primacy that the government should see as an essential service today, because only 20% of the schools had access to internet last year, or students who had access to internet for education, right? Then on the left hand side, rural power solutions, even other states can emulate. This is about a recent ruling by Rajasthan's power regulator. Enabling energy access must go beyond powering rural homes. So this is a policy judgment statement regarding how solar energy can be imparted in different areas, how it can create a local grid to supply electricity, right? Rather than importing it from outside depending on coal. Okay. Then moving on. So as COVID cases dip, we keep seeing more and more pictures of COVID centers being shut down or temporary facilities being taken up, right? But then moving on, judges must look at facts of a case and its human aspect. That even if it's a case of crime or a theft, the crime of theft, the solution or the quantum of punishment can be different based on the human aspect. Someone stealing so that he can enrich himself further, let's say a Vijay Mallya, instead of someone who steals from a bread shop to feed his children, is a very different manner. matter altogether. And that is what the Chief Justice was talking about in his particular speech. Then moving on the national news, nothing of real note for us here. All right. So we turn to the international news. On the international news, as US withdrawal from Afghanistan gets closer and closer, they have finally withdrawn after 2 decades. US exits key Afghan base. This is the base at Bagram in Afghanistan, from where US mostly operated its operations for the past 2 decades against the Taliban. This base has now been handed over, all right, to the Afghan government. This marks the US withdrawal is almost complete in Afghanistan. This is an extension to the Doha agreement signed between US and Taliban in 2020 that US will withdraw from Afghanistan in totality. All right. So this is the big news of Bagram Air Base. All right. Israel strikes Hamas site in Gaza over fire balloons. So more and more airstrikes have taken place in the area on Gaza Strip of Hamas operations, or wherever Hamas could launch missiles into the territory of Israel. All right. So these are self-defense measures. Then moving on, Mali responds to India's letter on media attacks. This is a controversy not that relevant for us. In general, this is claiming that media houses had been running a campaign to smear India's relationship with Maldives. All right. So Mali is the capital there. Then moving on, India sees consensus by October on OECD G20 global tax deal. What we need to know is what is the tax deal. We have talked about it earlier during the G7 summit. All right. So that is one very important deal. This is about minimum tax base to curb the problem of base erosion and profit shifting. India expects we will have a deal with G20 and OECD companies. OECD countries, G20, the global economy, the group of 20 countries, largest economies of the world, and OECD, group for developing and developed countries. All right. So if they agree, which would be large scale up to 150 countries out of 200, then there will be no escape, or this would now be the baseline of global corporate taxation. India also favors it, that there should be a global minimum corporate tax in place. All right. Apart from this, so what has India characterized otherwise? Pillar 1, relocation of additional share of profit to the market jurisdiction. Pillar 2, regarding minimum tax and subject to tax rules. Now let's say the pillar 1 is something that I'm going to explain, that is relocation of additional share of profit. A company, let's say Amazon, all right, operates in India and operates in US, all right, where it is based out. Okay. Now, US is charging it 15% of taxes, all right. India is charging 12%, all right. So there is, and Amazon is making, let's say, 80 US dollar of operation or profit here, all right, and it is making 60 USD here, all right. It says that these operations are to be halved in India, that is only 40 is going to be Indian operation based, all right. So they are shifting 40 from India to USA, all right. So they are escaping tax here. If India has this much percent of taxes only on 40 US dollars, then there is some profit that is going back to USA. To curb this problem, this pillar 1 is going to say that additional taxes, that is, if US is going to tax this party, this 40 US dollar here, that is in US jurisdiction at 15%, there is still some tax that they owe back to India. So this transfer from US to India is what pillar 1 is talking about, that excessive taxes that have been charged here, or taxes a company has evaded in India but is paying in USA, will now need to be given back to India. This is something, a complex mechanism, will happen in multiple jurisdictions. Therefore, this is what the pillar 1 is talking about. Okay. that if a company has shifted profit somewhere else, they are being taxed there, they should be owed back to India at a different rate, right? So if there are 12% of the taxes from this 40 should go back to India, or US should transfer that to India because it is the tax that is owed to Indian state, all right? So this is what pillar 1 is. If I earn something and I transfer it to USA, US is taxing me, whatever I earned in India, US government should give back to Indian government, even if Amazon is not. This will prevent companies from escaping tax from one jurisdiction to another, all right? That companies will have nowhere to hide and pay taxes at the end of the day, all right? So this is what the agreement ka pillar 1 is all about, all right? Then moving on, historic moment as 4 Indian share code. This was the first all Indian mixed doubles match at Wimbledon, all right, in the open era. Saina Nehwal and Rohan Bopanna won the match, all right, but it was the first time an all Indians match took place at Wimbledon, all right. Then moving on, apart from this, on the sporting side, nothing of real note for us. So on that note, I conclude for the day. News that is most important: US exiting Afghanistan from the Bagram air base. Then the global minimum tax regime that has already been agreed at the G7 summit and India's support for it. The problem that is trying to tackle profit shifting, base erosion, all right. Then all Indian team at mixed doubles in Wimbledon, which is also an important news from sporting section if that comes. So on that note, I'll conclude for the day. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to read the main editorial. Very important to understand China. In case you get a question about China, it is one that is going to help you answer all sorts of application-based questions. So on that note, thank you so much, and I will see you all tomorrow.